everybody doing tonight? How many of you have never been to a RefreshMiami event before? Show of hands. Wow, that's more than that. That is fantastic. Welcome, one, and welcome all. So, since so many of you are new here, I guess I'll give you guys a brief history of what Refresh is. So Refresh is the largest technology and entrepreneurial focused organization in the state of Florida. We have 9,000 fellow entrepreneurs and technologists just like you throughout South Florida. And we host these monthly events just like this. Every month we bring in great speakers like Brian, who, let's give him a round of applause now. Because apparently he killed it last night, so he's going to kill it tonight too. So 2 nights in a row, he's got a great week ahead of or in store for him. But anyway, so Refresh, our goal is to promote technology and entrepreneurship and help teach everybody how to build great companies and great products and great innovations here in South Florida. So we don't have a lot of veterans in the industry down here, so our goal is to bring in that knowledge and share that knowledge with you so that everybody can learn and we can build the coolest stuff we can and build great companies and expand the South Florida's economy through technology and other means of entrepreneurship. And so we've been fortunate enough to have great supporters like you guys for all these years. This is our 9th year. I think our 9th year. Our first event was March 2006. It was 5 people, and now look how many of you guys are here almost 9 full years later. So give yourselves a round of applause for being part of the community. And since all of you guys are new, my name is Brian Brackeen, and I'm the founder of Refresh. And Peter Martinez, who's been walking around with the baby, is the co-director of Refresh. So Peter and his son Vinny are responsible for putting on this event, organizing all the logistics, and making sure everything goes off without a hitch. So let's thank Vinny and Peter for taking care of this. So we've got a great show for you guys tonight. I don't know why I said show, but great event. I guess I've done this so many times I lose track. So this is, I think, our 120th event, I think, at this point. And so I want to thank the Museum of Science, the Patricia and Philip Frost Museum of Science, for being our gracious hosts the last few months and for just being great and supportive of us. So let's give them a round of applause. We're giving everybody a round of applause. So our next event is actually going to be here March 26th. It's going to be FinTech related, so if you're into finance and technology, make sure to mark March 26th on your calendar in advance. And don't be distracted by any other events going on in other parts of town. But yeah, so we hope to see you all here then. We'll have some more great, exciting announcements coming in the next few weeks about what the specific topic will be and who the speakers will be once we get them all confirmed. But the date will be March 26th here at the museum. So tonight I want to introduce Dr. Eldridge Birmingham, who is the Chief Science Officer. Chief Science Officer, am I in a safe zone here? Chief Science Officer for the museum. He's going to tell us a lot about what they're doing now and in the future of the museum and how you guys can get involved and all that. So, Biff, you want to come on up?
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Baby Vincent, as well. It's great. And thanks to the other Brian. A lot of Brian's here tonight. Thanks Refresh for inviting me to tell you a little bit about Frost Science. And thanks, Boris Girmas, for one of our board members, for being here. That took me by surprise. Let me tell you a little bit about the museum. It's shown here. Well, before I do that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, because I figure you should figure out something about the Chief Science Officer of Frost Science. So you probably recognize that's the Panama Canal. And so I moved here just about a year ago from Panama. So I worked with the Smithsonian for 25 years. I was first a research scientist, then a senior scientist there. I'm a geneticist by training. In my last 7 years, I directed the Tropical Research Institute. So it's the only bureau of the Smithsonian Institution that's outside of the United States. So I have a tremendous affinity for the Caribbean. I have a tremendous affinity for Latin America. And I really saw in Frost Science a tremendous opportunity to look to the south, look to the tropics, be a major museum, in a major metropolitan area like Miami, but to both provide a resource for that community, but also to provide a resource for the larger region. And so I'm really excited to be here. It's been a great journey, and it's a great museum. And so I'm going to just run through a 4-minute video, fairly long, 4 minutes, and tell you about it as I go. So I'll just narrate as it goes along. Claudia, there it goes. You're mostly from here, so you realize you're coming east down Government Cut towards Museum Park, just south of 395, Perez Art Museum, and the footprint here of Philip and Patricia Frost Science Museum. This will ultimately be a constructed wetland to take care of the water that comes off. And the building is really in 4 pieces: a planetarium, exploration center, to all you guys, an innovation center. I'll talk to you about that more later. And in the foreground, you've got the living core aquarium, which would be magnificent. It's a building that's been designed by Grimshaw, really wonderful architects. I encourage you all just to view it from Knight Plaza, but when it opens, come and see us. Although I do give tours occasionally if you want to see it now. It's got a 250-seat planetarium. It's angled at about 22 degrees, so it's a full dome, 8K resolution. It's going to be a remarkable resource for the community in Miami. I can tell you more about that as we go around. You're coming around, again, Knight Plaza here, the Perez here, and you're looking down the central atrium. You've got the living core on your left as you're facing, the exploration center on your right. You're going up to the 4th floor, and this is really cool, again, particularly for this group. River of Grass, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas's great book. This is a kit for early learners in science, 3 to 6 years old. It's virtual reality, including physical. It's something called embodied cognition. It's really the role that physical movement, in addition to abstract thought, plays in early science learning. You're now coming off this plaza into the Baptist Health People and Science Gallery. This will go away. Part of the funding model for the museum is to have big events. Miami loves a party, lots of party space. I'm much more excited about what happens. So by day it comes to life around the role science plays in our daily life through diet, exercise, learning, social connectivity, relaxation, sleep. This is sort of the money view. You've come down 3 floors through the living core aquarium, and you're looking up into the 510,000-gallon Gulf Stream tank. And it will only have things that you would find in the Gulf Stream, but that said, we'll have some cool stuff. Short-fin makos, common thrushes, you won't see anywhere else. This is an 85-foot long digital wall. You will not see a humpback whale in the aquarium. Although in Miami, anything can happen. You're coming back out to the area. There's a lot of really cool features. So I love these little fenestrations, so kids like Vincent can look through instead of having to be held over and sort of find his own way through there. You're now coming up to the 4th, level 4, which is the Vista. This is not air-conditioned space. You're now looking across that same tank, 100 feet across, out towards Government Cut. The whole Vista level, of which only we show that, is really the environments of South Florida. One of the reasons I'm here. This is a spectacular area to be in. Green roof, fully accessible. The flora of South Florida will be up there. We'll talk about solar energy. We'll talk about the moon. You're stepping back. This is the Innovation Center. Tremendous opportunity. It's got a very different history than the rest of the museum. That was going to be History Miami. This is the exterior of the planetarium. As you see, it comes to life at night. More opportunities to tell stories and showcase cool technologies. Again, the Innovation Center. At the base, you have the Innovation Cafe. At the top, you've got the Innovation Boardroom. We're looking for founding members at $1 million a piece. If any of you have done really, really well recently, come and see me. Or see Boris, even better. Knight Plaza. All right. So I thought what I would also do, so that's it. Coming back from the park here. I should say too, because maybe, I mean, some of you probably went to the Night Cities Challenge. So any of you know Night Cities Challenge, some of these, the science bars that was proposed would be right there. And of course, Museum Park itself was one of the other finalists in the Night Cities competition, so very cool there. All right, just a couple more slides, because I know you're really here to see Brian, not to listen to me. So, but I thought since you're here to listen to Brian, I had to show this. So I better move so Brian can see it. So the whole museum is part of the science experience, all right? So you'll be able to come in and you'll actually be able to look at how you're interacting with the museum. You'll be able to understand something about energy conservation, water conservation. If you actually give us your energy by like riding a bicycle or dancing on the energy dance floor, you'll be able to see that. But you can see here, we also indicate that we're going to know if you're in a good mood or a bad mood, and that's Brian. So I don't think we've hired you to do this, Brian, but that seems to be what you should be doing. As you can see here, we're pretty confident, maybe overly confident, everybody's going to be in a good mood. There's only a very small number of red dots. But it's a little surprising because it's more than in the planetarium. So on a slightly more serious note, and my last slide before a couple of pictures, I want to talk about one education program. One of the things that we do really, really well at this museum is talk about excellence and equity in education. And in two important areas. So Dr. Judy Brown, who's run that program for many, many years, has been very successful at working with communities here in Miami at risk, and also for working with populations that are underrepresented in science and technology, which is not true of this audience. There's a lot of women here, but that hasn't always been the case. And Judy's played a leadership role nationally, not just locally, for 2 decades now. But I wanted to talk about one program in particular, which is our Upward Bound program. So we mentor about 60 students a year from Title I Miami students that come in. And any of you who know much about Title I schools in Miami, the graduation rate is about 61%. The 60 students a year that we mentor are graduating, in the last 5 years, 100% of our students have graduated high school and entered college. And I think that's a remarkable achievement, but I bring it to you guys tonight because startups and entrepreneurs always talk about scaling and scaling up. And 60 is a great number, and we're really proud of what we've accomplished. We're really proud that they go off to college, get out and have good jobs. But 60 is too few. So any of you have wonderful ideas about how we scale up, let me know, and we'll move on. All right, so just to wrap up, this is the view of that 510,000-gallon aquarium. So this gives you a real sense in real life, as opposed to a rendering, of what happens when you're at the 5th floor of Frost Science, looking across the Gulf Stream tank and out out Government Cut. And one of the things I love about this museum, what's the name of this tank? Gulf Stream. And so as you look out Government Cut, what are you looking at? Gulf Stream. All right. Right here, we have the Florida Reef. And as you look at South Beach, and you look south to the Keys, you're looking at the Florida Reef. That's the 3rd largest barrier reef in the world. Fairly exceptional. And in the prow of this, you've got the Everglades, our source of fresh water, 30 kilometers to our west. Where else in the world can you go where you can be introduced to environments that are right at your doorstep and learn about them, learn about their importance? So zoom in and understand something about a coral, this wild relationship between an animal and a flagellate, and then step back, zoom back, and sort of understand what are the importance of coral reefs, what are the importance of mangroves, what are the importance of the Gulf Stream. And that's just a view from inside. This is the Baptist Health People and Science Gallery. And I just, that's the exposure when you're in that gallery looking out. And it's a little bit overwhelming. So, 510,000 gallons, 8 pounds a gallon, so that's 1 million pounds, concrete plus rebar plus tension table, about 10 million pounds over your head. Suspended on these 6 columns. We look forward to welcoming you. And this is what it looks like today. So, planetarium was just capped off. This is the Innovation Center. You see the living quarter in the background, and you see here the roof of the Exploration Center. So thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me.
purpose of tonight's event is to sort of show you the deep inside what a startup is like. So everybody hears the sugar-coated, whitewashed, like sterilized version of what building a startup is like. Oh, it's super easy. Just go out and raise $10 million and you're good. You'll sell your company in 5 months and you'll be a billionaire, right? That happens maybe once in the history of mankind. All right. So tonight is about learning what building a real startup is like, what the real challenges are, what people are really going through. And Brian has been so gracious enough to come and volunteer to let us tear him apart on stage. But yeah, so I want to thank Brian for volunteering to do this. And remember, this is a no holds barred, ask whatever you want. So the format is going to be Brian's going to give us tell us the narrative and the story, and give us background. And then I'm going to ask Brian some questions that I prepared, and then we're going to turn it over to you guys. And I think, well, we'll figure out how we'll handle the Q&A for you guys. But if you want, ask your questions and just tag them at RefreshMiami on Twitter. And that way we can go through and pick out the best ones and have some order. But without further ado, I want to introduce Brian Brackeen. Come on up.
Thank you. Good to see everybody. Hello, Miami. Hello. Good to see you. Looking good today. So this is really going to be a lot about, again, the ups and downs. I think you gave a really kind of brilliant opening, but and this is not meant to be kind of a sell for Kairos and the services that we provide. But I was really so inspired by your presentation, and you guys paid some good money for those animations, so I really appreciate that. And my team always gets mad when I do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. We would be happy to provide you with the emotional recognition capability for the museum, and so we can talk offline, but just totally for free for the museum. So thank you so much. So now I like you before I do a check. So, yeah, as you mentioned, a little bit of background on me and my story and how we got here, and so I'll start there. I think we've got a few just questions he has directly for me, and then again we'll open it up via the Twitter feeds. And so I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, originally. Like a lot of Miamians, I'm not originally from here. Moved here about 5 years ago because I broke up with a girl, and I was like, oh my God, I'm single now. I'm going to move to Miami. This is what you do. Like a tourist, I moved right to South Beach. I spent way too much money down there on drinks. And it was about, and prior to that I had worked at ADP, kind of in the payroll space. I worked at IBM. And so I was like, this is it. I'm working at IBM, I'm living in Miami, I'm consulting all around the world. I'm going to get my gold watch one day. And that's what people do, and then you just kind of retire 20 years later, right? And then I got the call that kind of changed my life. And I got a call from Apple saying, hey Brian, we've got this really interesting experience. You have a lot of international experience, a lot of this HR payroll, back-end systems, and we're growing. At the time they had like 20 Apple stores, you can imagine. So again, we're building all these new retail locations, we're opening new corporate locations around the world, and your experience is very particular to what we need. Would you be interested in interviewing or joining up? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so I literally packed all my belongings. I got some family here to contest to this. I packed all my belongings into 3 boxes. I mailed them regular mail, which was a mistake, to San Francisco, and I spent the next 2 years or so at Apple, at a time kind of post-iPhone, but pre all the way through iPad, so a period of just exponential, like 800% growth. And I learned a lot about scale, and I learned a lot about really high tech, and I learned a lot about thinking different. And I realized that all the problems I had earlier in my life, I was a terrible student, mostly D's and F's, social promotion, that sort of thing. Around 10th grade or so, the light went on, and I was like, if I don't do a little bit, I'm not even going to get to go to college. And in my mind, at least my parents had told me, and college is just like the 13th grade, like it's just automatic. And so I started to apply myself a bit, and I was able to get into, Lincoln University at first, I spent exactly 1 day there and realized that wasn't for me, much to my parents' chagrin. Then I went to Penn State. I spent about 3 months there at night, and I also realized that wasn't for me, and decided to go into the workforce. So my very, very, very patient parents continue to support me and continue to support my entrepreneurial endeavors, even though it's just kind of like failure after failure at that stage, and it didn't stop there. So fast forward, do that work at Apple, catch the entrepreneurial bug, and then I quit my job at Apple, and then I start. I actually went through an accelerator called New Accelerator out west. And so, for those that don't know, accelerators are programs that help young startups and young entrepreneurs to understand startup, to understand how to scale, how to raise money at a really early stage, and it really prepares you for this I don't know, experience that you're about to go through over the next X number of years. And so, yeah, the program is called New Accelerator, sponsored by Angela Benton. It was covered in CNN. Got through it, and I just fell in love. Just realized this is what I was supposed to be doing. That thinking differently, and all the kind of challenges I had all my life, and my inability to kind of follow the directions of my various bosses was for a reason. It's because I was supposed to be doing my own thing. And so I moved back from San Francisco, back to the Miami that I love, and decided to start the company here. And as Brian mentioned, I thought, okay, cool, I'll just start the company, it'll go straight up, and that'll be that, I'll make $1 billion, right? And that's, as you mentioned, that's just kind of how it goes. And then I realized that kind of wasn't how it goes. A ton of mistakes, and these mistakes were not just professional, but also personal. And some of these mistakes are things that I continue to work through and work at even today that I haven't fully kind of overcome, but I'm learning and iterating every day. So one of the first things I did was it's funny because I had a co-founder at the time, someone who will remain nameless, and I realized there was so much work to do that I needed somebody to help with all the tasks. There's a million tasks to do in the very beginning. But what you also have to realize is, when you take on a co-founder, you're essentially married to that person. I mean, literally married in a way that you really almost can't get divorced, or divorce is going to be very, very difficult. And so, in the beginning, I should say it's expensive. Yeah, that's right too. Like a divorce. And so, yeah, in the beginning, of course, it's all roses, everything's great, and then it's kind of that first fight where you realize you have slightly divergent views, but you think, maybe it's all right, maybe this is just that one thing. And then it's the next thing, and it's the next thing, and it's the next thing. And you slowly, as you kind of get into these little fights become bigger fights, and they become longer fights. They become like more kind of knockdown, drag outs, and you can start to even question, is it me? Am I seeing this wrong? Am I crazy? You start to ask other people. And because very few people in your life are going through these things, it's really hard for them to understand kind of the level of strife that you're going through. So one of the things I'll certainly suggest here is talking to your fellow entrepreneurs. A lot of the people in this room are the only people that you know in your life that go through what you go through on a daily basis. One of the great things we do here in Miami is a group that gets together for dinners from time to time. It's supposed to be monthly, but we're all entrepreneurs and we're slackers. So it ends up being bi-monthly or quarterly, but those dinners are really important ways to hear other people say, hey, you know what, I'm going through the same things. Ultimately, we were able to come to an amicable little divorce, and I was able to buy all that person's stock and really and have, again, the control I needed to push the company forward in the direction that I wanted to. So that's the good news. The bad news is I had the control I needed to push the company into the direction that I wanted. And so here I am, now I've got a little more control. I've got the core team that I wanted, and I realized, okay, now it's time to really kind of go at it. So I need to go out and I need to get some investors, get some more investors, get some more money, get some more capital. And so that first dollar, man, like that is the hardest dollar to raise. I think we were talking a little earlier with the gentleman who's having a hard time finding that early funding. And so I went really kind of door to door, and I mean that, you know, quite literally. Going to every single event, every single Refresh event, every single meetup that I could go to. I talked to everybody I could. I handed out my really kind of cheap at the time business cards. And I was just like, I just want to have a lunch, I just want to have coffee, I just want to talk to you about, you know, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to build. And I eventually convinced one person to see me, and to see me again, and to see me again. And it was really funny, and he was really kind of, you know, intelligent, spoke a bunch of different languages, and had a bunch of really, really rich friends, which was also the key. And so I was able to get him to invest, you know, the first $50,000 or so in the company. He brought, you know, 4 other friends or so, able to raise, you know, between $150,000 and $200,000, you know, more. And that was really the money that I needed to get things, again, kind of moving forward. So, again, things are great. I like, okay, this is all we need because we're going to make money right away, so it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go out and just hire everybody I know. We're just going to kill it. We're just going to kill it. And, you know, we're going to kill it so bad that I better get a sales guy now. Because we're going to be just taking these orders, and man, that didn't work out that way. In fact, what happened was, one, as an entrepreneur, as a technical entrepreneur, I'm really good at the tech side, but I am really, really bad at figuring out who a great salesperson is. The skill sets for a sales guy versus the skill sets for a tech guy can be very different. And it's really hard, for at least for me, to interview people with that skill set and to figure out who's good, who's bad. The other challenge is salespeople are really good at selling, right? So they're also really good at selling themselves. And so you think this person is just, oh my God, we're gonna kill it. You're not gonna kill it. I didn't have a product that was ready to be sold. So it was probably, quite frankly, frustrating for him as well, because he couldn't go out there and push it like he wanted, and frustrating for me. I'm like, dude, where's my $1 million? Like, what's up? And again, it kind of starts to go downhill in these relationships. And the other thing is, sales guys are also really good at negotiating their salaries. So again, learning, iteration. Yeah, I paid this guy too much. I paid him too much, and I was, well, he made, you know, not the most of the team, but certainly we couldn't sell anything, so what was the point? And his compensation wasn't based on commissions, as it should have been. His compensation was based on like a really nice base and stock and blah, blah, blah. So he's just, literally, again, nice enough guy, but just draining and draining and draining the resources that we needed for more engineers to build the product out, and we're just kind of wasting, you know, money on early sales guys. So eventually, months later, I realized, okay, this isn't working. I'm going to cut ties. I'm going to keep what I have left here. I'm going to really focus on some of the engineering talent. And I'm going to really kind of create a much better, much better system, a working, at this point almost still like a working, but a much better working prototype. I'm going to work with 1 or 2 companies that are really close to, and hopefully they can help us to kind of prove the model out. And that proved to go well for a bit until we ran out of money. Right? And so here we are. I finally learned at least a little bit. I'm finally making the progress I need. And you've got to go to your old investors and maybe some new investors and say, hey, look, I've blown my own money. I've blown some of this investors' money. We are completely out, and I need you to kind of believe in us again. And the initial answer was absolutely not. Just absolutely no way. And so what leads me to, you have to then have that kind of tough conversation with yourself, like, oh my God, like, have I led these people down the garden path? People with their wives and their kids and husbands, and they're all looking at me like, so what are we going to do now, right? What do I have to do? And so I remember having the first of many kind of very serious, kind of tearful conversations with everybody. I said, hey, you know, you're going to get paid this Friday, but you're not going to get paid next Friday. And I can't tell you when you're going to get paid again. But I can promise you that I am going to make this right. I can promise you that I'm going to work 60-hour weeks until we find this money. I'm going to promise you that I will do everything in my power, ask, beg, borrow, to really get us to the next, you know, to the next bit of cash so that we can really complete our dream. And if you've got to go, I understand. I'll give you the greatest review ever. And I totally get it. Bills have to be paid, and none of the way because Brian didn't raise enough money. Brian blew all the early money. But if you stay, I promise you that we're really going to change the world together. We are really doing something big here, and now that we're starting to get it, I can see it. I can see it. I can feel it. I just need a little more time. I need us to work a little harder, a little longer, and let's show people what we can do, and that will help us to fundraise. And so I had that talk. I kind of got up the next day, got on our Google Hangout, and every single person was there. Every single person. And I still get emotional about it, and I've told this story 1,000 times, and I still get emotional about it because everything that I am, everything that we are doing now, the fact that we can offer Frost and Living Service is because of those people. And I'm committed to our idea, but even more so, I'm committed to our employees and what they do for us every single day. And so for those that are here, that actually made that sacrifice, and everyone in Team Kairos, if you would just stand up for a second. And I know it's embarrassing, but you're going to do it. And let's just give these guys a round of applause. They're going to give me hell for that tomorrow. But yeah, very great. So there's more to it though, because I made the mistake again. I do believe. So I hired another salesperson. I'm like, okay, that last guy. Now we're ready. Now I'm going to hire the next sales guy. And we were more ready. And we had a little bit more of a product. But we didn't have was product market fit. And for those that do a lot of reading in this space, you need to get to a place where you understand what the customer is buying, you understand what you're going to charge them, you understand why they're buying, and you understand how often you're going to be able to convince other people to buy this. And you think you're there sometimes, you feel like you're there, it's close enough, but no. You'll know when you're really there. And I'll tell you something else. Your investors know when you're really there or not there. So don't go into these pitch sessions saying, "Oh yeah, we're killing it," and they're going to ask a clarifying question. They're going to know that you're not killing it just yet. And so yeah, I got to the point where we were again making some really good traction. We were almost there. I hired another salesperson. I think the mistake this time was I was hiring a good guy, very talented, wrote a book on sales, but he was really right for 3 or 4 iterations before that. And he wasn't right for kind of where we were going. And so he had a hard time kind of selling the new. He was kind of always going back to the old model. He had maybe a somewhat unrealistic sense of. He came from a big place, a big company where a product was done, and you're like, hey, he didn't work here, but I'm just giving an example. Hey, if you're IBM, people call you because you're IBM, and you sell them IBM. You're essentially taking orders. It's like being a sales guy at the Apple store. You're not really selling anybody an iPhone. They come to you, they're ready to buy that phone. You're taking an order. And yeah, just because somebody does $50 million in SAP, or $100 million in sales, at IBM, guess what? They might do nothing for a startup. Absolutely nothing. And that's exactly what this person delivered. Absolutely nothing. But nice guy though. And so, you know, the challenge is, and as you heard kind of we talked about my team, like it's like family, right? And so you're working together side by side all these hours every week. It's so hard when you have to kind of, you know, let somebody go. It's really, really, really hard. But again, this is part of the emotional roller coaster and the ups and downs that are being a startup founder. I had let people go in my other previous lives at Apple and IBM and things like that. But it's just a job, you know? It's just a job for them. It's just a job for you. It's very academic. With a startup, you're probably hanging out with that person at night. You might even, you know their family really well, or their kids. You might be like, you know, you name it. And so, it's a breakup just feels very, very serious, very, very serious. And so, I had that chat, had the breakup, and again, I went back to the core. Let's just totally focus on what we're doing. And along the way, I mean, I'm kind of not linear here, so I apologize. But along the way, I had been fundraising all throughout. And so at this point, we had raised about $1.3, $1.4 million or so. And we stopped then, and we really just really focused on product. We really focused on making everything better, a new web presence, we focused on design, and that really started to pay off. We really started to get customers that were willing to pay, really finding customers that were coming to us inbound. I was doing all the sales, and I'll tell you, as a startup founder, no one is more passionate about your product than you. And so people love to talk to the CEO, you know? They love to feel the passion that you have for facial recognition or whatever your product or service is, and they will buy because of that. And when you hire somebody, they have a hard time kind of channeling that passion. They talk about, our founder thinks this, or we believe that, but you really need somebody to say, I believe this, and I believe that, and I can promise for my team, we're going to do a great job for you, client A. You know, we're going to just kill this for you, client B. You're going to love us. We're going to change your business. You're going to make a ton of money, and it feels more real. It feels more real when you're hearing from the person. So I would offer, don't hire any salespeople until you are really to a point where you can't handle the sales anymore yourself. And so it was at this stage that I realized, okay, now we're getting here. Now we're getting there. But as an entrepreneur, we're always a little too ambitious, right? And so we had finally gotten to this really good point. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do an acquisition. Why not? Why not? I can do it. And so we started to look at acquiring one of the firms that we work with a lot. And then we got word that another firm that we work with a lot was also available for sale. The thing about these startups is they don't do very well, so there's always a startup for sale. And we were like, that was pretty nice too. I'm going to buy that one too. And so here I am. We're just getting to where we needed to be. We're just turning that corner. I was just finally free of these kind of not so great sales people. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do acquisitions. And again, where's your focus? You need to kind of focus on delivering for the customer. The good news is the second acquisition ended up being smaller, easier, lighter, nimbler, and more aligned with what we were delivering to our customers, and really was the right one. And the first one, while still really good, needed to just be pushed back to one thing at a time, and just digest it, go to the next one, digest it, go to the next one, and that's really, it's really what we're doing now is focusing and doing one thing at a time and iterating and now that we have some of these, again, this larger fit, we hired the latest salesperson. And that latest salesperson is doing a much better job. And now, because of them and because of us, because we're in a better place, they're just turning knobs. They're just selling what we already have. They're just selling what we've already built. They're just selling what we're ready to deliver to customers. And so, the great thing about this is that instead of the first two people, again, maybe this is their fault, maybe not, but the first people who really weren't able to sell very much, but the latest person has been really just killing it. You know, we have multiple contracts signed and on the way, you know, in the millions. And he is just, again, the right person at the right time. I had known him for years. I had seen him deliver for other things for years. And that is the person that I realized in the end, find the one salesperson who you know, who you get it, when you're ready, and then they let that person who is a salesperson pick the rest of the sales team. You know, let that person set the strategy going forward. Let that person who you can know and trust and trust to deliver, let them deliver. And again, I think now because we did the right things, we're finally iterating in a really good way. So I just want to end on one piece that was kind of non-linear, but I think also very important, and we'll go to Brian's questions and then the Q&A. So the other challenge with being a startup founder, as if that list that I just gave you wasn't enough, is that it has a huge strain on one's family life, right? And I come from a place, again in Philadelphia, like family is one of those things, it's like everything. I don't know, for those of us that are from the Northeast, like for both sides of my family, they grew up in houses, one of them 2 miles from the house they live in now, the other one 4 or 5 miles from the house they live in now. I mean, everything in our lives in Philadelphia tends to be, you know, in a very kind of clear area. I said to my mom the other day, she was thinking about moving south, and I said, "Oh, you're definitely sure, blah, blah," and she was like, "Yeah, but where would I go to the dry cleaner? We're going to the same dry cleaner all my life, and where would I go to the Chinese place?" And she's been using the same services in the same places for 30 and 40 years, right? And so when the startup guy moves down south and chases your dream, you kind of fall out of like the rhythm of family, right? And so I'm going to do one more embarrassing thing here. I have 2 aunts here. One from Connecticut, one from Philadelphia. You guys want to stay there? All right. And I love you guys. And they can attribute to this childhood of mine. So this part of the story is going to be all kind of the personal side, and then we'll get back to some stuff. I really believe that all the value in these talks comes from the crowd, not from the speaker. So I'm really looking forward to getting to your questions, but I just want to give you enough, you know, ammunition to shoot it. And so my personal life background, a lot like Steve Jobs, I was adopted at a very, very early age. I think I was, I don't know, probably 6 months or so. Yeah, okay, cool. About 6 months, I don't remember very well. I was adopted at about 6 months by 2 amazing, loving parents. They are literally the perfect parents. They don't never fight, they don't drink, they don't smoke. They're just like amazing, amazing folks. And so they told me very, very, very early on, like that I was adopted. It was never a secret. It was never like, oh, you know, you're gonna find, just finding out from somebody else. It was always treated like, yeah, it's normal. Like, yeah, you're adopted or not. So what? You know, blah blah. And I remember them saying again, all my whole life, that, hey Brian, you know, it's no big deal. Your real birth certificate with your real parents' names are in the library. Get a library. Again, these are great people. They're in the library. They're in the first drawer. About halfway back in the shelf, and if you ever want to look it up, you ever want to look them up and find out more about them, it's totally fine with us. It's totally fine with us. It won't hurt our feelings at all. Everyone's entitled. And I never opened the drawer. I never opened the drawer. It's still there now. I just, some people do. My sister did. But me, I was cool with just exactly what I had. But I always thought they always told me I was very special. And that I was selected by them. And so that feeling, I think, is part of kind of what drives me as an entrepreneur. And then, again, their patience. Patience, not only with the D's and F's. Enough, right? But imagine a scenario where first I had this job at like ADP, right? Everyone knows that brand, payroll firm, or I had a job at Comcast, which in Philadelphia is like, you know, that's our biggest employer, right? So I had a job at Comcast, quit that and like, what are you doing? Right? Then I took a job at ADP, great firm, very steady, great. Quit that job for IBM. At least they knew what IBM was, but it was traveling, so it was kind of taking me away from home, but I was happy about that. But then I got comfortable with that and consulting and all those things, and then I quit that, and then again, after some consulting things, ended up at Apple, and they were like, wait a second, you're going to leave IBM for this company, Apple, which at the time was like 3 years out of bankruptcy. Like, what are you thinking? Why would you do something like that, right? And so then I leave, I work through Apple, right, again, kind of post-iPad, you're killing it. You're killing it. I'm like, you know what, Mom and Dad? I'm going to start my own firm. I'm out of here. And they're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And so I think you said, I think they're proud now, but I was actually just told by my aunt, she visited my dad the other day, and he said he's very, very proud of the work that I'm doing. And so I'm super humbled by that as well. I'm glad I can finally have made them proud. And the last piece is on children. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and unlike her, she doesn't have a job doing AV and stuff like your son. But it's tough. She and her mother live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I saw her a couple weeks ago, and they were here a couple weeks before that. But when I lived in Philadelphia, I was an every weekend dad, and now I'm like a every month dad, or every just 2 months dad, or unfortunately even sometimes an every quarter dad when it goes really far. And it sucks for her. She does, she deserves better. She does, and she, as successful as I think Carol's has ultimately been, and hopefully will ultimately be, she's going to end up with, her mom's amazing, so she'll be like all right or all right to good childhood, but she could have had been someone. And so the sacrifice isn't mine. The sacrifice is really hers, right? And it's tough. It's something that, as an entrepreneur, it's a tough swallow. And if you live with your children and it's great, you're home at night, that certainly helps. But if you don't, it's hard to make that work. So I would say, find a way to find better balance than I did. Again, not for you, but really for them. And with that, Brian, I'll take your questions.
This is the first time there's been more than one Brian in one place in Miami in like 50 years. Slide over this way.
No problem.
That was fantastic, by the way. That was fantastic. So if you guys have questions, make sure to tweet them to hashtag or at RefreshMiami. I'm pretty sure everyone knows how to use Twitter now. So, sorry, you can't ask questions. I'm just kidding. So I've known you for what, 2-3 years?
Right.
Yeah. So when I first met you, you didn't actually have a product yet, right?
No.
You were just showing off PowerPoint, right, and an idea. So, were you, walk me through the timeline, because when I met you, I thought this was all right, Kairos has this facial recognition thing for time clock punching. That was the original use case, right? But, so you guys were out selling before the product was finished, right?
100%, yeah.
And so...
That I did.
So what happened to all those potential sales that you had with this? It was still vapor, right? So how did that affect the building of the actual product?
Yeah, you know, if we'd done it the right way, we would have taken a smaller subset of those people and been a bit more iterative.
Yeah.
And allow them to kind of tell us what they wanted to build. I really focused on my previous experience in that area, and I thought, I know what they wanted, you know, and I had a good idea, but I didn't know everything they wanted. And it's the last little 20% that's the reason they buy, right? And so you have to ask them what it is. And it wasn't too far from PowerPoint to real thing. One of our early employees was an iOS developer, so we were able to start pretty quickly for proof of concept. But yeah, initially it was purely just presentation.
So how does the current use case differ from what you were envisioning 3 years ago?
Sure. I like to say the current Kairos is like a pivot on a pivot on a pivot. So to your earlier point, we made a facial recognition time clock. That was my background. Elegant, easy to use, great design, as you would imagine from an ex-Apple person. And it actually ended up working great in the end. The challenge was making facial recognition work. We realized was really, really hard, right? And mobile, it wasn't mobile. It didn't have any compression. It didn't have any any encryption or back-end database or anything that you would expect in a modern system. And so as we built all that for ourselves, we realized, you know, that's the business, is making facial recognition easy for anyone, anywhere, any app, any service in the world is a huge billion-dollar idea. And while time clock is great, and now it is, you know, it was at the time working and we had people on it and processing all these punches, you know, that may be a really cute $200 million idea. It's crazy.
Right.
But, you know, it was the $1 billion idea that was going to get us the real funding.
Right. So, all right, so let's talk about funding. So, you've met with probably every investor from here to Jacksonville, I'm assuming. And or probably from here to Boston, I'm guessing. So, like, when you were, like, what were you looking for in an investor other than just pure money? Because anybody can write a check, but that's not necessarily going to move the company's needle other than keep you out of insolvency.
Yeah.
So, like, what were the things that you looked for when you were looking for investors?
There's such a thing as smart money.
That's what I was leading to.
Yeah, well done. And so, yes, smart money. One of my favorite investors is here today, Alfred. I don't know if I'm going to have everybody stand up, but yeah, he's amazing. And so, Alfred is a good example of smart money. You know, MIT guy, spent a lot of years at Intel, knows our space, knows what what the world needs, and spent a lot of time with me just to make sure that we had that kind of right chemistry, and I with him, and yeah, we get along, we have conversations, and we agree, and we just kind of move forward, and like it's a good marriage. You know, I think what you see, I have one investor who's a bad investor, and again, I won't say so much, but person's a nightmare, you know, and it's not any, I'm the same person, the same people that love me, the same investors that love them, all but one, that love me. I'm the same person, the same way to this person. But when the marriage is bad, they just don't want to hear anything you have to say, no matter what. And so I would caution everybody to really do some vetting on your investors, talk to the people that have invested in the past. You know, even something as simple as a Google search. And it's important to know as much as you can, because in the end, the money you get invested in you could cost you more money than you get out of it for the wrong person.
Right. That's via legal reasons or whatever, I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what do you see as sort of the next step for Kairos? Like,
yeah. So we're growing the right way.
Right.
And so, you know, we're going to do about $4 million this year. So we're.
Congrats.
Thank you. We're
super. So you're Ryan next interview.
Yeah. We're glad for revenue.
Cash is king.
Cash is king. And actually, revenue really helps with that next big fundraise.
Right.
We're looking at a $5 to $10 million raise, and so getting, you know, if we hit even a quarter of that $4 million, that'll make that possible.
Right.
People see what you're doing.
Right, because you've shown benchmarks and track record.
Exactly.
Right. So that's, I guess that's another interesting topic, because this is your first time fundraising. This is your first startup, right? So, I mean, you do have the pedigree of IBM and Apple and all these things, you know, but do you think it would have been much easier for you if you had even a small exit or a small startup before where you raised even 100,000?
Much easier. I mean, that entire story, to think about my second startup, I won't do any of those things, right? So investors know that.
Hopefully you'll be filthy rich by the second startup.
Yeah, exactly.
So
investors know that the second startup, people tend to do better because they learn to iterate.
Right, but they assume that you've learned a lot, so yeah, that makes sense, because they're de-risking their capital.
Exactly. Because, and the Apple pedigree, I learned a lot from that experience. I would never trade for anything in the world. But I would offer, Apple isn't anything like a startup at all. I mean, we had like chefs making our every meal. We drove around these Mercedes-Benz shuttles all around. It was just not. It's
tough life.
Yeah, it was terrible. But no, it's not. That's not startup at all. It's in fact, it's the opposite.
Right. Well, they are literally the most valuable company in the world right now. So
literally the opposite.
They could buy every startup.
Yeah, exactly.
Like everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah, and still have money left over for their Mercedes chefs.
That's great.
So, anyway, so how has being in Miami affected building your company? Like, what are the drawbacks or the advantages you've seen here versus, because you could have started this company anywhere, you know, so.
Yeah, we took a very scientific approach. We looked at, I think, 5 cities. We looked at San Francisco, Austin, Philly, DC, and Miami, I think, maybe a couple others. And look at things like burn rate and available talent for the languages we code in and the angel investment and all those things. And actually, Miami won on its own merit. Won that competition. The burn rate here is much lower. The rental space is much lower. The lab Miami, where we were until we recently moved to our own space, this was a very affordable option for us. And yeah, we code in PHP primarily, and Miami has a good number of PHP developers. So yeah, it made sense. But I've got one more stat for you that's really key. For those of you guys that are raising money or looking for angel investors, and we talked a little bit about that earlier, know this. I pulled this number from AngelList about 2 months ago, so maybe a little off, but California, North and South, has 24,000 startups and 8,200 angel investors. And Florida has 2,400 startups and has 7,800 angel investors. So the mix is completely in the startups side here. And you'll find that when you put that first or second person, they're bringing a bunch of their friends because they're all looking for things to invest in.
They're all looking for deal flow.
Exactly.
Right. So then do you think this is a supply and demand issue where the investors are here waiting to invest in people, they just don't know who, versus in California where you just go to Cuba Cafe in Palo Alto and hand out all the checks, to the baristas, and you're like, oh, what are you working on today? Oh, sweet, you got another app to tell me how much coffee's up in my cup? So, all right, so one of the big issues with being an entrepreneur is the ups and downs, right? Everyone, who's never been an entrepreneur thinks it's like this great life, you walk around, just hanging out in your flip-flops and stuff, whatever. And it's like you make your own hours and all this stuff. But the reality is nothing like that, right? The reality is you bust your ass, and it's an emotional roller coaster. So how have you managed to deal with that? Because you've seen it, the peaks and valleys,
Yeah, there's a lot of books that talk about the emotional whiplash of startup, and I think I was always. One of the great things about me and one of the worst things about me is that I don't have a ton of emotion, right? And so it works really well in startup because I don't get really, really high, but I don't get really, really low. I'm always kind of in a general good mood pretty much every day.
I can empathize with that.
Yeah. Just like a happy guy.
Yeah.
But also in relationships, sometimes people that I've been with are mad. Where's your emotion? I'm sorry, I just don't feel that. And so some of the things that kind of serve you at work don't always serve you at home. And I guess, again, I'm still guilty of this. you gotta try to empathize with the other person, whether that be in business, whether that be with your investors. Think about what your investors want, what they're looking for. That's going to be their life savings in some cases. Think about what your customers want. Think about what your employees want. Think about what your partner wants. You know, and if you can be more empathetic, you can be successful.
So one of the things that ties into this whole cash is king is understanding the value proposition, which I think that's something a lot of people don't know early on. They can't wrap their head around the value that they're offering versus how much they should be charging and pricing. Like, how did you guys figure out, like, oh, this is the sweet spot for pricing?
Yeah, very.
Or you're still trying to figure that out?
I mean, yeah, no one's pricing is ever done.
Right.
Like,
right.
There's a pricing team at Apple. It's ridiculously huge. They're still figuring it out. I think that iteration, one, you can literally see how many sales at this price and this price. You A/B test with Google, and that's actually very easily done.
But most of your sales though are direct by, they're not automated, so it's hard to do A/B testing on.
We have both.
Yeah.
And so, maybe I should mention. So we have products that do emotion recognition, as we discussed. They also do gender and age and that sort of thing, like demographic information. That product is just priced per camera. You can go buy it and just buy it. So there's about 650 customers on that solution, and that's a low touch.
Yeah.
Then the higher touch ones are, we have customers like cruise line and hospitals and people, multi-million-dollar contracts. Those people require a lot of conference calls and visits and blah blah blah. And those, it's purely hiring people who have negotiated those contracts before. And in our case, we were looking at becoming an Endeavor company last year.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. And so they have people that actually specialize in that area, and you can get help from them.
So that's actually a great point to sort of pivot from, which is the mentorship aspect. And that was, you talked about Newme, and now, I think this is the first time you mentioned Endeavor. How, like, apart from those programs, like, how did you find mentors and people to, like, pick their brains?
Yeah, my early investors were certainly played a key role. Some of my favorite people in the world are Marco Gioberti and Juan Pablo Capella. Like, those guys, some of our early investors, amazing. I could call them literally 24 hours a day. They would answer, and they would give me some salient advice. They'd be like, why are you calling me 3 a.m.? But they would give me the advice. And they've also really become friends as well. I feel like, when I see them with their wives or girlfriends or whatever, like, it's like family, because we've been through it together. So I start with the investors. But a lot of those folks that I spoke to early on when I was kind of just walking around town with a book bag and a presentation when we met, I still keep in contact with almost all those people.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. So, do you have any tips for people, like how to manage and how to sort of manage those relationships with those contacts? And,
don't turn down the coffee or the tea. It gets tougher as you get busier, but at least you can do a call. Try to find a way to meet with folks. And sometimes it's literally impossible, and even then, send them a nice long email. And I think long emails are like, it's painful sometimes. I love text, but if you can't get to them, show them that you do care and that you really, have some kind of back and forth. Yeah, I don't miss an email generally.
Cool. So, you want to shift over to channel questions?
Yeah, channel.
All right. Yeah. All right. Let me pull out the Twitter feed. So if you guys have questions, send them to the @RefreshMiami right now.
I felt some buzzing too, so it must be a little bit of pressure.
So one of the questions from Mike Fernandez, he asks, early on, how do you get employees to buy in and give it their all while still maintaining ownership?
You have to be really good at telling the story, and that's true for investment too. You've got to be really good at just motivating people. And one of the things that I do, I think is my personal style of leadership, is I believe strongly in a couple of things. One, distributed responsibility. So when somebody owns something, they own it all the way, and that's just their responsibility. We don't have like a set number of vacation days or anything like that at Kairos. It's really unlimited because your responsibilities are your responsibilities. We trust that you're going to just get those things done. People love to work in that kind of environment. And I think actually diversity plays a large role in that as well. people love to feel like an environment where they're welcome, no matter who they are. And you know, I'm just a big fan of particularly women in tech and you name it. I think it's just an area that we all can do better. And startups that have female founders or females on the kind of the executive team.
Level,
yeah, exactly. Are more, I think it's more than 30% likely to less than, yeah, more than 30% likely to succeed in their counterparts. So.
Right, I think that was YC's Female Founders Conference, they were talking about that. Yeah. So, hire a female co-founder if you can, right?
Yeah, exactly, you do well.
So, alright, one question from Ariel Coro. How do you know the right compensation model for your salesperson?
Commission.
So 100% commission.
100%, no. I mean, you know, you gotta live, they gotta eat, but it should be. Well, we do a couple of things. You could compensate them with a base and stock, and allow. This is what we do now. Everyone's kind of in the same boat, you know. I think I like that model. Or if you do a commission, give them enough to, you know, meet their bills, but also say to them like, hey, you may have been making $150,000 before. You may only make $50,000 in this startup, but the upside, give them an uncapped upside. Say as big as you can blow this thing up is as much money as you can make.
And that's in both the commissions and stock options or grants, or just purely
easy on the stock. You don't want to
right, you have to maintain your cap table, and your investors are going to be unhappy when your first sales guy now owns 48% of your company.
No, stock needs to be set at that amount. But cash. If
they're bringing in cash, then that stock is worth more.
Exactly.
Right. So, rising tide floats all boats, right?
Amen.
Yeah. So, this one's from Nizar Khalif. I think I pronounced his name right. I don't know. So, that would be awesome. So he asks, my apologies if I mispronounced your name. How do you hire a non-sales team that will still be in the hangout the next morning?
I'm going to assume, well, if you're early stage, you shouldn't. You're talking about, how the tech people.
Right, the non-sales guys. He wants to know, how do you get the right tech people who will still be there next day?
That's a tricky one, because the tech people know they're the tech people, right? And they're a tech startup. It's like trying to compensate the people that make the cars in Detroit, and you make cars for a living. It comes, for me, it comes back to humanity, though, right? They're people, just like your salespeople, just like your general counsel, just like your CFO. Speak to them and treat them like the amazing humans that they are, and they will certainly say.
Awesome. So there's another question here from Lara Carolina, who asks, when and how are you planning to exit or sell your company? If not, why not?
Check the week out. Awesome, Alfred, exit.
Well, I think that's actually a good question. If you look at it, because some companies are built purely to sell.
Yes.
Right? And others are built to be, like, for longevity.
Yes.
Right? You know, and I think there's that sort of paradox, or dichotomy, I guess, in a lot of value startups where it's like, all right, we're building this, we have no conceivable way of actually making money, like revenue, but we're just going to hit 1 million users and sell as a Snapchat or something like that. Like, that's sort of this pervasive mentality. Yeah. And then when you compare it to like here, where the investors here don't tolerate that kind of bullshit because they don't have experiences selling an Instagram after 6 months. You know, they don't have experiences where someone else values those users. You know, here it's cash rules everything around me. You know.
All right, keep going.
So, but you know, so Wu-Tang they knew what was up, right? I'm not gonna go into the rest of the lyrics. That's not PG or whatever. But so like, and when you were building Kairos, what was was the motivation? All right, I'm gonna build a company that's gonna be generating cash and making money for years to come, or is this gonna be $1 billion idea? I'm gonna sell in 16 months, and you know, ADP or someone will cash me out.
Yeah, as an East Coaster, I'm a big believer in creating value for our customers, for our shareholders, and for our employees. I'm a big believer in changing the world. You know, I'll ask the Steve Jobs model. So we are focused on building a company that will go all the way to IPO, and that creates great wealth here in Miami for all of our employees and our community, so they can go off and then build their own great big things. So.
So there's another good question from some person named Athletic Select that asks, was your initial seed investment structured as convertible debt or safe vehicle? And how did you agree on valuation?
I don't remember if safe was around. Maybe it was, but I don't know if how familiar I was.
It's more popular now.
Yeah, more popular now. So yeah, it was a convertible note. I think it was, you know, maybe $1 million valuation, maybe even like 750, something like that. So yeah, very straightforward. 5% interest rate. Yeah. It was very straightforward. Yeah. Convertible note. For that person, if you read Venture Deals by Bradfield, yeah, great book to kind of get caught up on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of like documentation nowadays about what terms to accept, what everything means, because if you're a first-time founder, you've never been down that path, it's very easy to be sort of misled, because there's a lot of unscrupulous investors who will offer you $20K for 15% of your company, and all of a sudden you're screwed when it comes to raising actual money. Yeah. You know.
Well, the real investors, when they see that, like, oh no, I'm not even betting with this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, you're
right.
Or gal, you're
right. Right. Yeah, that happened a lot a few years ago here in South Florida, but now I think we're seeing more savvy on both sides of the table. You know, it's good because it evens up playing.
Yeah, do the Carfax. You know, do your research. Just know.
So would AngelList be the Carfax of?
Yeah, maybe.
So we have a question from Boris.
Could you tell us a little bit about dealing in a startup with new technologies and obsolescence? How do you balance usually when you're innovating as you were with facial recognition, it takes time to catch up. And innovation, it's the right idea, but innovation, perhaps it won't catch up too early on the curve. How do you balance that with a cash burn, with the obsolescence, or perhaps someone on the West Coast figuring out a better product and precisely getting to be able to sell something?
Boris is among his many talents. He's also an investor. That's why he asks really great questions. And so I can tell you how we handled it, because I don't know if there's any really one answer to that question, as you know, right? For us, early on, we realized the areas that were kind of in the harder sciences, we were going to license those technologies, because we were really good at SEO, really good at design, really good at selling, we were good at finding the customer. So doing some early licensing deals allowed us to kind of deliver at a high level initially, and then later starting to kind of build up the IP kind of on the back end, and then also through acquisition to build up IP as well. So I'd say, you know, we're about a 60-40, 70-30 split, us to license, and our goal is to get to 100. But yeah, now it's through time and through revenue, just kind of buying the pieces.
But the obsolescence itself, the product not aging and being able to get.
Oh yeah, you have to. Yeah, we're maniacal.
Technology,
yeah, we're maniacal about that. We're maniacal. I mean, like all of us in tech. I mean, you can never stop learning, and I think as a business, you can never stop innovating. You can never stop iterating. If I was in corporate America, I'd probably be like an innovation lab, and I would be trying to disrupt the company that I worked at. And we do that as part of our process anyway. And we look strongly at competition. You have to understand your obsolescence, right? And what they're doing, and is it really unique, or is what we're doing unique enough? And how do we, if it's better, how do we catch up? How do we surpass them? You know, we like where we are now, but it won't always be that way. So we're maniacal about it.
So one of the books you mentioned, Venture Deals, by Bradfield. Are there any other books that you found useful or would recommend for use?
I think Ben Horowitz's book, it's called The Tough Thing About. Yeah, you guys know better than me.
Ben Horowitz, it's the hard things about the hard things.
The hard things about
yeah, he's one of Andreessen Horowitz's big venture capital firm co-founders.
Yeah, met him through Newbie, amazing person. Yeah, I think those kind of get you either from the beginning or the network gets you more kind of at scale, I think. Startup community is also another Bradfield focus. Really, really good, especially here where we're building something really amazing here in Miami. I think it really helps understand the thinking about some of the Knight Foundation programs you see, and some of the great assets we have in this town, including universities, and understanding how that all works together.
Cool. So I think, just to wrap this up, if you were to start from scratch again, right? What are the 3 things that you would do differently?
I raise more money, and I would focus that money on, like, and we all like tech people, all tech guys and gals, like me, and really kind of focus on that core group for the first, year.
Yeah.
And then I would kind of grow that out. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that we're in a bunker. We should still be iterating and talking to people and understanding. But I think it should, be a product owner, have the tech folks, run that, create a really great culture, and then grow the team.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming. We're out of time.
Thanks for having me.